Alfonso, please welcome, and once again, thank you for your participation.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mario. Thank you so much for the Sports Law Hub for the kind invitation for which I am honored, and of course as well to Valeria and Isla also for the collaboration, and again the the designation, okay, in between both, which I'm freely feeling is a true pleasure. And indeed, I will just cut to the topic, because I assume this is what the students are, students and attendees and all the professionals that eventually may be assisting, may be willing to hear from, because indeed disputes in the field of esports and everything related to this, because all of those that we have like a preeminent sports law background, which I assume is the large majority of us all here and all the attendees, maybe we have already like some ideas in mind as to how it works in our respective jurisdictions. We know there are some countries in which labor disputes are not subject to arbitration, such as the case in Spain, for instance, like not further than that. Then there are some other countries in which this is allowed, okay, on many cases. And therefore, whenever there was a private entity, like a tournament organizer or a publisher, who imposed a sanction of ineligibility, of just exclusion from a competition this private entity organized, what was the immediate reaction? Many times was just taking it to ordinary courts. Why? Because again, these companies were not yet developed enough to foresee a previous procedure, or having set in place like anything that would eventually look alike on the slightest. Okay, they had not put in place any procedural warranties whatsoever, absolutely nothing. And therefore, this gave rise to big problems when it comes to some, as I was saying, like to some common threats that the whole industry was facing, like the players, the coaches, the agents, but of course, tournament organizers, of course, publishers. Why was that? When it started to appear, the commission of certain illegal betting, of certain match fixing, certain corruption, some doping as well, but to be honest, the occurrence of doping was more residual. I mean, more insignificant in comparison with what could be seen on the betting side. And why was that? Well, for the very specific features of the esports world, and what was the actual impact, or what actually can be considered as enhancement of performance, or what is the substance really, or which ones can really have a strong impact in relation to this. And if so, what is the actual advantage really obtained, which has nothing to do in comparison with what would be the effect of doping substances and methods in traditional sports. That is the reason why this was not considered like a major threat, but still a threat. Back in 2017, where the first project of a kind like was drafted by the Esports Integrity Coalition back then afterwards renamed the Esports Integrity Commission, when all these threats were identified when it comes to integrity-related threats. And in order to answer these, or to tackle its occurrence, it was decided to the creation of a private body, but who was meant to only address these issues specifically related to integrity matters. That means that if there was any dispute of a horizontal nature, dispute between a player and an agent, a player and a player, a club and a player, two clubs among themselves, none of these was under the scrutiny or under the jurisdiction of the Esports Integrity Commission. The Esports Integrity Commission just put in place a list of judges, and then like an internal prosecution and two instances, domestic courts. And then it is true that some of these tournament organizers, like particularly Riot Games, who's the publisher, the creator, the developer, for two of the most important esports games, because you guys know that there is the difference between video games, which are absolutely all of them, and then there are like some others that are considered like, or named designated esports, which are those in which there is a competitive practice on it with clubs. I mean, there is a whole like competitive ecosystem behind it, with players getting paid like professionals, agents, etc., etc. So on those, two of the major ones are Riot Games with these two, League of Legends, which was the first big esports that could be video game that could be considered like a pure esports or as such. And then Valorant, which was developed like later on, but also with a clear idea, of course, of turning it into a major esports. Then when it comes to the other publishers of big video games, we were talking about Esports for the previous FIFA, not anymore called like that for naming issues, of course. As you know, then also we had Valve, there was Blizzard, and then some other with some major games in there. Like, let's say that the tournament organizers and when it comes to competitive rules and disciplinary rules, this was in a way trying to be protected. But then on other sort of rules like compliance by contracts, like not the existence of unpaid wages and so on, this was completely left at the discretion of the parties. And therefore, like players many times were suffering for this because, again, just like in traditional sports, this is a very international industry in which you have playing in Brazil, players from South Korea, players from the US, players from Europe, then the same thing. You have in Germany, you have playing players from South Korea, from all over Europe, from South America, from Turkey, and then in Spain exactly the same, because Spain like would be like the B league or the development league, or not officially, but in a way unofficially, yes. For these players that afterwards, if they are good enough, they will go to Germany. In Spain also is plenty. There are plenty of international players. These players were forced to seek redress before Spanish labor courts. And how was, or up to which extent was that possible, just like the same in Germany. And that is why Riot Games decided to create this esports tribunal to rule upon also horizontal disputes. Okay, so no longer related to disciplinary rules like ESIC did, but then Riot Games was like, okay, we also have to provide a solution to our stakeholders when it comes to these games. Sorry, to this sort of disputes, but not to all stakeholders. To be precise, this works for cases involving coaches, cases involving players, cases involving clubs. So disputes in between clubs, for instance, for the transfer of a particular player. Of course, this is subject, right? Once again, is very much welcome. And therefore, I will jump right away with one question that have been posed here by Afonat. Hi, Kadiato from Paris. Kadiato, I assume it's me, but it's Alfonso. But anyways, so sorry, I'm on the public transfer, so just dropping a comment here. Thanks for the session, very interesting. IP plays a fundamental role, and publishers own the game. It's like if they own the ball in football. Indeed, each publisher governs its own game and decides the rules, features, and who can organize competitions around it. It is something that can be challenged from a competition law perspective, abuse of dominant position. Thank you. Cheers. Something else, sorry. What, in your experience, the most convenient legal structure to set up an esports club, association, enterprise? Okay, so I'll drink a little bit of water because this is a long. So, good question for being written from the public transportation in Paris, like how, and as chaotic as this is. So, on the first one, indeed, because the fact there are like major distortions of the competition, and I think the ones that I was finishing up with, I was already like sort of dropping that in a way because of how it is, how esports is structured. Like actually, publishers have absolutely all the power, and that makes that many times if publishers do not inherently, like on their own, feel the need of giving to players, coaches, clubs a judicial system like this one that Riot has very positively felt like they needed to provide to the industry. It is very hard, not to say almost impossible, that this will be implemented. Again, because just like in traditional sports, we know that they do not have such a monopolistic, even if they try or pretend to sometimes, but they do not have that, and therefore the rest of the stakeholders have a lot of power, particularly if they gather. In esports, it is not like that, and therefore, yes, it is an abuse of dominant position, of course. Up to which extent, like following up with that question, when it comes to the enforcement, whenever a disciplinary sanction will be imposed against a club, a player, a coach, for not exercising, or not being able to actually compete, will be considered or something that could be challenged before courts? I would say definitely. Definitely, if this is considered like a professional, that this is his professional activity and he's only living out of it. And even more, there are like some tournament organizers in which we can see on major competitions. We can see that, as I was speaking at the beginning, still lack, because again, this Riot Tribunal specifically relates to Valorant and League of Legends. That means huge games with huge professional players making a lot of money, where there can be a lot of disputes, and even those that are not making so much, but still can have a dispute because they rely upon this to live. Like, as I was saying, like the former FIFA from EA Sports, or I would say Counter-Strike, of course, or so many other players that have actual competitive gaming, they remain in the exact same situation. Exact same situation in which they can do exactly whatever they want to. So is that an abuse of dominant position? Can it be considered as such? Definitely.
Through the chat. Does anyone have any question? Okay. Valeria.
Yeah, maybe I have. I'm so sorry for my connection. Maybe I will disappear in one moment.
It's okay.
So,
It's okay.
Alfonso, thank you so much for the presentation. It's really very interesting, especially for people who are not working in esports. And just 2 weeks ago, everywhere was this news about new arbitration. So my question is a bit crazy. What do you think? Because I think it's the first example among all sports where just the publisher of the game, for me, it's like a tournament organizer, maybe like this, right? They create their own arbitration court, right? What do you think? Is it possible in the future that, for example, new sports that are coming right now, for example, paddle, and paddle also doesn't have their, international federation recognized by IOC, the same as an esport, that, for example, paddle can do the same, and just the organizer of the tournaments can create their own arbitration, body? Or and the crazy, like, why this question is crazy, because with the previous speakers of our MatchPoint Talk, we're speaking that maybe in the future the role of federation will go a bit down, because right now more, for example, in golf, in paddle, in pickleball, it's more the tournament organizers have more power than federation. So what do you think? Could be the example for other sports, or just only for esports? What do you think?
No, yeah, I fully agree with you. I think it is with the colleagues with whom you were discussing about this, because I think it is a clear trend. I mean, in some others, like in football, it's true that everything is more stabilized because of all the huge stakes that they don't need, that they're major players. It will take substantially more time to just change all these tendencies and so on. But I think sooner or later it will come. I think there will be more and more weight being given, for instance, to collective bargaining agreements. I mean, to the role, just like we can see in the MLS, which will become very soon one of the major competitions, I think, in the world, like particularly as the World Cup will coming, and then after, it is a matter of time that this league will continue to rise. And there's a system there, which I think is pretty much similar to one in Australia, also a strong role, just like with this US model of collective bargaining agreements, that doesn't give so much power to the actual federation to rule on absolutely everything, but actually tends to also set a lot of priority on what do the actual clubs and the leagues as their representative and the players, the union of players, say about this. Okay, so thereby depriving the federations of some authority to just come up with this, because we know there is supposedly all this, whenever a federation goes through its own legislative process and issues its regulations, all the stakeholders have been heard, right? Like clubs, players, blah, 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 for the different representatives. But up to which extent the representative players, the representative clubs, the representative agents have a clear and important say. How much are they listened to? For sure. Are they taken into account? I mean, the actual wording is what they have proposed, or is it really what is coming from the federation? And I think it is what is coming from the federation. And that we can see with the agent regulations, that we can see with pretty much with the RSTP also, that now with the Diarra case is going to change, and now FIFA is going to listen to. But it's not going to do so because FIFPro told so, or the ECA told so. It's because the Belgian courts have pushed. So I think on other sports in which the situation of the federation is not so robust, as you were mentioning, paddle and some others, of course, because the international federation in paddle, like just, well, when this arising of the Qatari investment, lost a lot of the affiliated members, over which it could use its powers, and therefore it lost a lot of authority. And this league ends up becoming the one that prevails. What will matter is, it will be similar than in esports. It will be, what will matter is, what will this league say that are the competent judicial bodies, or how is this going to be handled? We know how it has been handled by the federation, by the Paddle Federation, until the stage, which is the old-fashioned way of all federations in the world, which is like they were pretty much ruling, and then it got the same. But again, with the rising of Relief and the Saudi investment behind it, I think this definitely will change the way they all interact, like these different powers, like interact among themselves. And I think it is a matter of time that federations also will be losing a little bit of power, because more and more, I think clubs will be able to organize themselves, and the leagues also, and will be granted like some major clash in between Superliga, Real Madrid, and so on, and FIFA, UEFA. I think it already happened in skating, with there was a major clash between Pestein and the International Skating Union. It opened already the field. Then afterwards, we saw that not so contentious and through litigation, but as you were saying, with paddle, with golf, and this trend will keep on going. On some major cases in football, they will fight very hard for it until the end, and the federation will keep having such power. We don't know for how long, but in the others, I think definitely it will be more oriented to. I mean, the others one, and that is why I was talking about collective bargaining agreements, because I think it will be the way that this will be happening more in more sports. In esports, it's super specific, because the publishers will keep on having like so much power, because again, and just like Kadiatou, and thank you, Mario, for correcting me, because I didn't realize that it's her name, and it's like, hi, Kadiatou. Hi, this is Kadiatou from Paris, but I just like, hi, Kadiatou from Paris. But anyway, okay, she's Kadiatou. So as she was saying before, in esports, they really own the actual game, and they can't really shut down. So I think in terms of competition, it is easier for them to afterwards win this case if the actual product like fully belongs to them and set their own rules. And I don't think in traditional sports they can do that so much, and they will be losing more and more to that. But I think esports is a matter, maybe the change will not come from the publishers themselves, sorry, with the exception of Riot, who has done a fantastic job by anticipating this, even though they were not in a legal obligation or any other obligation to do so. But I think for the other games in which maybe they're more passive, all these publishers like Blizzard, Esports, whatever, I think the industry itself and also the fans, the media will be calling on them to react and follow this path that very wisely Riot has done. Because I don't know if there is any injustice that is done against one of their idols who all of a sudden doesn't get paid on whatever game it can be that is not under Riot, and the guy goes public and everybody, I don't know, there is frustration on social media, whatever it can be. This has a negative impact on the game, and therefore on the publisher, on his revenue, and therefore for mainly economic driven factors, but also image and reputation driven factors that will be forced also
with industry best practices and regulations. Thank you all very much for participating in this talk, especially to you, Alfonso, for the willingness and knowledge that you have transmitted to us today, Alfonso. We hope to see you at our upcoming trainings and future events. Do not hesitate to contact us if you have any question, and follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn profiles. Thank you again, and have a great night.